For this episode, we're going to be talking about the new release and now infinitely or indefinitely delayed game Cyberpunk 2077, a game which my two pals here, Dom and Ryan,
Hello.
have both owned and now subsequently got rid of, and being one of the most hyped up games of the year, wasn't it? Or the most hyped up game of the year, wouldn't you say?
Yes. I mean, not even just hyped of the year, probably hyped of the generation. It was all culminating to this.
Yeah.
What was it about it that was, do you reckon, why it was being so hyped up in the first place?
I think it was the first kind of game that promised to deliver half the stuff that it ended up doing and the other half that it didn't. I don't think there's ever been like a cyberpunk as a genre. I don't think there's ever been a cyberpunk game, like a Blade Runner style game that's, like an actual modern game. The amount of stuff that they promised or, alluded to being able to do was unthinkable, like Rockstar level and above. And it just didn't deliver on those, unfortunately, but that's what it promised.
Yeah.
So do you think it didn't deliver because now I don't know much about this company in question that made the game. Who is it again?
It's CD Projekt Red. They did The Witcher 1, 2, and 3. I think that's pretty much the only thing of note that they've done.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, their whole career is pretty much set in stone by Witcher and Gwent. That's about it, isn't it?
It's a small little Polish, well, I guess they're not small anymore, but they were for most of the lifetime, small Polish company. So it was quite odd and refreshing in a way to see a game being marketed so much that wasn't just like, a London studio or an LA studio. It was like an actual studio of caliber somewhere else in the world. So I think that was probably another reason why people were excited, because they've done, usually when you get these kind of smaller or more kind of out there developers, they will tend to do things that are a bit more adventurous. So maybe that was part of it.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was interesting because at first, because I didn't know too much about the ins and outs and who made the game, I thought a reason why it ended up going the way that it went was that this was a company trying to make something on the same kind of level as something that Naughty Dog or Rockstar would have made, and therefore fell short because they weren't up to that kind of caliber that they were at. So henceforth was why the game had so many problems, because it was trying to, I don't know, play with the big guys or something. I don't know. But if they made Witcher,
I don't think that's a bad analogy to make anyway. Like, no. I think The Witcher, like, yeah, I wouldn't go ahead and say like The Witcher wanted to be Elder Scrolls or nothing, but it definitely wanted to be like the new big open world game. But that was kind of untapped market. There wasn't that many like huge open world fantasy RPGs. Like we have plenty of like top down ones, like games like Pillars of Eternity and all that kind of world of RPG. But
you had smaller ones as well, like things like Dragon Age and stuff, but it's kind of going for two different goals, whereas Witcher 3 was huge and open, and you go do all these side quests and stuff, and you could do that in Dragon Age as well, but it's just got a different vibe to it. It's more kind of linear.
Yeah. So I don't think you're wrong there, to be honest, Rob. I think there is a certain element of them trying to play with the big boys when it comes to...
I mean, not even that, but just even when you compare it to Rockstar, like if you look at their marketing trailers and then look at the marketing trailers for GTA 5 and Red Dead 2, they copied them to a T,
identical,
to the point where I think they got the same woman to do the voiceover for them, because it sounds so similar.
Here's the kind of clothes you can wear in Night City, all that stuff.
Yeah,
it was straight out of the GTA book.
Yeah, because it's like Rockstar games, they've kind of become like an entity in themselves. They've kind of gone beyond just being a company. Like even just the name Rockstar, people know what you're talking about, even just down to like merchandise for themselves. Sometimes I see T-shirts just with Rockstar games. So they've taken on this new kind of life at the moment, which is why I thought maybe this company was trying to I guess, follow in their footsteps in a way, maybe running before they could walk. Because I don't know kind of like size comparison with like the Witcher games to like GTA and Red Dead and all that. Would you say Red Dead and GTA are much bigger, or are they kind of equal in terms of open world size
compared to The Witcher?
Yeah.
Witcher does it a little bit differently, where it's like they will take big, like still really big, but almost like levels, so or areas. So there's like maybe three big ones that I can think of off the top of my head. And there's loads of stuff to do in there, but it's not all connected. It would be the equivalent of if you could go from Vice City to San Andreas. Like they're quite self-contained, as opposed to something like Red Dead 2 where you can go across the whole thing. But each one of those was still massive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean the main the main like hub we had like it was like a huge kind of wild land with like a couple of big cities. I think it was Oxenfurt and Novigrad, I think it was, and that area was probably as big as GTA 5's map, if not bigger, maybe.
It's probably about as big, yeah.
Yeah, I guess because you're not driving around, so everywhere is a little bit slower to get to. Yeah. But I mean, The Witcher 3 was a damn fine game. They definitely. I think the beauty of The Witcher, because I was very late to the party, whereas Ryan, I think you were pretty much at the party for Witcher 3.
I had the same thing as you did, where like the first time it didn't quite click with me, and then but I knew it would, because I had the same thing with Witcher 2, where the first time I played it I didn't like it, and then I came back and I really enjoyed it. So I just let it sit on my desk for like 3 months until I was like, what am I going to play? Sure. And then I played it, but it was still like fairly newish, whereas you were quite late indeed.
Really late, yeah. And I think I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, it was, I already knew how much hype The Witcher 3 had, that, when I first picked it up and I first said to you, like, I'm not feeling this, was when it was already like, game of the year and, best game ever made and all that kind of stuff. And then I tried it again. I still couldn't get into it, and then ended up getting it on PlayStation and finally sunk into it after, 3 attempts and like 7 hours of just grueling through it until suddenly clicked and I went, actually, this is fucking great. But I think the thing that separates The Witcher from Cyberpunk is that, unless I'm wrong here, The Witcher 3 was kind of like a sleeper hit. Like, nobody really cared about The Witcher. Like, they thought it was cool, but
I think it definitely got hype up to Witcher 3. I know Witcher 2, nobody really cared. And then it was quite late into it was probably like 6 months, a year before Witcher 3 came out, before people started really caring. But it was big on release. Maybe not kind of to your more casual gamers. I don't think they would have picked it up on launch, who probably did pick it up kind of a year, 2 year, 3 years later. But compared to Cyberpunk, where you can't walk down the street without seeing it on a bus or a bus stop or side of a bin. Like, it's literally everywhere.
Yeah.
It's on the inside of my glasses. Yeah. I can't get away from it.
God damn it.
Yeah. So going on to like with Cyberpunk, in terms of like size comparison with the size of the games and the maps and the complexity, was Cyberpunk kind of was that kind of announced to be like it was going to outdo all of these games? Like, you've played Red Dead, you've played GTA, you've played all this. Now Cyberpunk is going to trounce all of them in terms of everything that we've seen before in gameplay.
Yeah, I think that's probably the main problem I've got with it, and we'll get into this more later. But it is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, case I can think of a game over-promising and under-delivering, because there's quite a few things. I get it if you've got to cut things, if you've got to scale back on things. I get it, time and money, but there was certain things that they were advertising quite like up to the wire that just weren't in the game, and I thought, there's got to be something shady going on here, where they're advertising. I mean, if you not looking at like the bugs and the crashes and just being able to play it, but just, I remember watching videos. I watched a video that came out a month ago, 2 months ago, that said, here are all the different types of cars we've got in the game, and they all handle completely differently, and each one of them, and blah blah blah. And all the cars just kind of feel the same, which
exactly
is
the
pretty
same.
bad.
Oh yeah, awful driving
So
mechanics.
It's just little things like that they would put out the constant. Their marketing team was on the ball, best marketing probably I've ever seen for a game, considering this is some Polish developer that most people wouldn't have heard of. Yet Cyberpunk was this juggernaut, and then they kept just putting out these videos after video after video. Considering the game was announced in 2013, yeah, you would have thought people would have fallen off it by then, but they started like really hammering it home maybe 2-3 years ago, and putting out gameplay and stuff. And the gameplay, it looks reminiscent of the gameplay there now, but I went back and watched it the other day, and there's a lot of stuff in there that just did not make the cut, to the point where even just things look a lot smoother in the game than it actually is now. And I don't think we can put that down to bugs and stuff. So that's just another one of the things where I just think, well, this is a little bit of false marketing.
And of course, I imagine it helped also with marketing having Keanu Reeves involved in the marketing side of it too.
Yeah.
I think when that sort of came out, that's when I think overall in the grand scheme, people really started catching wind of what Cyberpunk was.
Well, it's funny you say that, because in the gameplay video I watched the other day, so he plays a guy called Johnny Silverhand, and in the game, I don't think it's a spoiler, he died in like 50 years before the game started. When you watch the gameplay trailer from 2018, I think it is, which at this point the game's been in development solidly for about 3 years, because Witcher 3 came out in 2015. They say, oh, Johnny Silverhand died last year. So it's clear this was like 3 years into main development out of 5, and they still don't have the story's completely different from what it ended up actually being. So whether that's a case of they got Keanu Reeves and they went, rewrite the story, we need to get more Keanu in there, or what, I don't know. But considering, if you were 60%, if you were planning a movie and say you had 5 years of pre-production, production, post-production, if you got 5 years, sorry, if you got 3 years into that and then the director turned around and said, we need to change a load of this stuff, there should be some alarm bells ringing there, surely.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to, because narrative is the easiest thing to adjust. Obviously, it's different with a video game, because I get what you mean. If you're suddenly going, there's basically like, Rob, there's this big mission that kind of opens up Johnny Silverhand, where you kind of flash back in time and you play as Johnny, and you kind of see it all happening and what's been going on, and who Keanu Reeves is as a character, because you don't really see him before that point. And so, yeah, I get what you mean, Ryan, because narrative can twist around to fit the design of the game. If they turn around and suddenly said, oh, we want to only have motorbikes in the game, we don't want cars, then the narrative designers can just go, okay, well, they banned cars in 2062 or whatever, they don't allow them, or whatever the fuck. But the problem with that is that would have required extensive design time, programming, animation, visual design, art assets, modeling, rendering, to do something where it would have been set originally a year ago from what you said, and now it's back in like 2020 for all the flashbacks. So that's a complete redesign of all of those sections of the game.
Which is funny, because you look back at, and a lot of people say, well, he died in 2020 and the mission takes place in 2020, but everything looks exactly the same, everyone talks exactly the same, all the weapons. It's like there was everything was still as futuristic 57 years ago as it is in 2077.
Which is
no
weird,
addressing that,
because the character turns around and goes, what was that city? Was that Night City? That looks so different. It's like, it didn't, mate. It was the same city with a dark filter on it. What are you trying to pull here? Don't use the characters to try and justify the fact that you did have to do a bit of a paint job. Like, I'm fine with you doing it, but don't try and
it's just, you can see, I think that's one of the biggest problems with this, is you can see the patchwork, which ultimately, I don't mind if if you had to cut way down, if you had to do this, that, the other, whatever, you got to do what you got to do to get it out on time and all that stuff, or make it the best game you can. But when there's obvious problems there, it's the same problem with, like, I know it's not no magnum opus, but you look at something like Justice League or something, and you can see where it's been stripped apart and put back together and stuff. And even if it was just a mediocre movie, you'd probably enjoy it more if you didn't notice all these problems and the mustache wobbling and all that stuff. It just really takes you out of it. I think that's another big problem this game had.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, me and you have talked about this so much about our frustrations about the game, because I think the convenient thing is that me and you weren't on the hype train. I probably was 6 years ago, back when back when it was just a pipe dream, back when when Cyberpunk got announced, we were on the PS3s and Xbox 360s, which is just it's crazy to me to think that it got announced 2 generations ago, and now we're playing it on a PS5, or played it on a PS5. Return when you can, everybody. I just think it's baffling how quickly people got on a hype train about little to no information beyond that 2012 trailer. Then you kept seeing all these trailers and stuff, and it looked cool, but we kept quite a calm temperament about it. We were just like, okay, I'll just see how it goes. The Witcher 3 had a lot of problems, a lot of stuff I don't like in Witcher 3, huge problems I don't like in it. But I was like, I'm willing to just wait it out. But the biggest thing I think that everyone's been seeing is, I'm sure we'll talk about the bugs and the crashes, but it's just, it's the fanboys, right? It's the people that were hooked from it from 2012, and they went and bought Cyberpunk merchandise in 2013, and they got like tattoos. I've seen people on Reddit with like 2077 tattoos, like having like samurai on their arm, or like just the stuff I've seen, so cringy. And I just think those people right now hate themselves because they've just hyped this game up to no end. The game's come out and it didn't match their expectation. Fair enough, it didn't match our expectations either. But I guess this is just like, this should be a big lesson in just not to hype. Don't hype.
So when you say it didn't meet your expectations, what happened that it didn't meet your expectations?
Well, for me, it started with surface level stuff. Like, it wasn't, because if it wasn't for the bugs and the crashes, I think it's a pretty fun game. There's a lot of stuff missing, and there's a lot of stuff that me and Ryan have talked about that's kind of pissed us off, with stuff that, mainly because we were essentially lied to in marketing. Or when you see things in the game, like Ryan put it perfectly by saying, like, you can see the patchwork. Like, there's a thing called brain dance, which is like, they put a headset on you and you enter this kind of virtual space where you can examine crime scenes and things like that, and you can watch this pre-recorded footage through people's eyes type thing. And you do the ones that run along the mission thing. But what's so fucking weird is that you can walk up to the floor or a vendor and you can buy or steal brain dance chips for like simulations, like, go into someone else's mind.exe, but you can't do it. You can pick up chips, but you can't actually use these chips. They're just there, which clearly must mean it was in the game and it got cut, but they left the chips in for what? Like, just to collect them? Because it doesn't mean anything at that point.
I mean, it's not even stuff like that. I mean, that is annoying, because it would have been so easy to just remove them from the store.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I remember there being, again, a massive trailer showing off that, and I was like, this is just a detective mode that was in like Arkham Origins like 8 years ago. But I was like, whatever, I don't really care. But it is the little things, like the bugs and the crashes didn't really bother me, because I would tell myself, well, these will get fixed, and they're not a problem. But it's small things like you can literally shoot a gun in the air, people go and if you turn around and then look back, those people are gone, like they've been removed from the game.
Yeah.
And again, is that a bug? probably you'd think, okay, well, this is a bug or something. But then people when they do run away, they will just run like 10 feet and they'll stop and they'll just stay there because they don't know what to do. If you walk into a road and stop in front of a car, that car will literally just stop and stare at you. It won't try and go around you. It will be inevitable. You can point your gun at them and they will do this. And they'll stay there forever. And you can take that car and then the police will go, he's taken that car. And then you drive around the corner and they forget. They forget that you were there. Yeah. We're never catching him.
The cops are the worst thing. Cops are the absolute worst.
Yeah.
I drove out.
No wonder crime in Night City so bad. They don't even bother.
Well, you say that, but then they're also extremely efficient because, like, I went out into the Badlands, which was like the desert-y area, Rob. That's the outskirts of the city. And I felt this moment of sadism, like you do in GTA, where you just go, I'm just going to shoot this person. Don't know why, I'm just going to shoot him. And
Darwin finished his beer for the night.
Yeah, exactly. Right. No, and there was a dude just standing next to a car on the middle of a desert road, no one around. I checked because I thought I'm going to kill this guy, and I looked around. There was no one there. But enough about me. Let's talk about Cyberpunk. No, and then I saw a guy there, pulled out the gun, shot him in the head, and I thought, cool, okay, done. And then I turned around and there was just a legion of cops out in the sand just running towards me. I was like, what is going on? So I shot them down, hid behind my car, was like shooting at the cops.
As you do.
Like, okay, as you do. And then suddenly I started getting shot at and I turned and the distance from the cops were here, the car was here, and I was behind the car and a cop appeared just here, just spawned right in front of my eyes and killed me. And then I thought, this is crazy. And it turns out that's not a bug. That's the AI.
That's just how it is.
That's how the cop system works. They just appear.
Yeah.
I see.
And there's so many things like that make you think these can't all be bugs. Like it can't be like all those things I listed in that order. They can't all be bugs, surely.
No.
There's no real like smart functioning AI system that's just broken on every single level under this game. It's got to be that's just they put that out because they were like, well, the story missions are sorted and that's all we need.
Well, isn't this going to make it frustrating when the game's like properly out and it's finished and it's ready to roll, and there's going to be elements in the game of, as you say, these AIs just spawning automatically behind you, and the fact that you're saying that you didn't know whether that was a glitch or not, a bug or not, do you reckon that's still going to sort of impede the enjoyment of the game now that people know that the game's been so glitchy and buggy? And when that's all gone away and you can play it properly, and yet there's these strange decisions being made in the game of having characters spawn like that, do you reckon it's still going to make people and even you feel like, wait, as you say, is this still a bug? Is it fixed yet? Because this is a really weird decision.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason I returned my copy, because I thought, well, because they promised, January and February we're doing massive bug updates and we'll get most of them sorted. So let's pretend by February that they've got every single bug sorted. In this hypothetical situation, the game, the driving's still rubbish. The gunplay's okay, serviceable. The stealth's pretty meh. The AI is brain dead. The open world's pointless. And those were all the things that I was looking forward to. I didn't really care too much about the story and the single player missions. I kind of more wanted to, in the same way about The Witcher 3, I don't really care about the main storyline of Witcher 3. It's the fact that I can go, what's over there? And I can go to this little town and pick up an odd job. And
exactly, you find some random NPC that you didn't think you'd find, and it ends up in the best quest in the game. And you go, fuck me, how many times have we said that in The Witcher, where it's like, that quest was better than the whole main quest? It was just a little side quest. But I went on a little spree on my last weekend of playing Cyberpunk, where I only achieved 4 days of playing it. And I went on a little spree of doing side quests and finding side quests, and they were all just the same thing. It was just, oh, I really need something, or I need you to kill something for me. Cut to, you go into a warehouse or some disused building, there's a bunch of goons there, you try and stealth past them, but as Ryan said, the stealth mechanics are shite, so you get immediately seen by someone, and then you got to shoot your way out, in which case it doesn't feel very satisfying. You finish, you come back, it's done. Like people seem to be talking about, oh, the story, the dialogue. It's like, I haven't seen that. The story's okay. It's okay. It's a cyberpunk story. Like,
for all we know, it might get better as it goes on because we didn't get really far into it.
No, but yeah, no, and that definitely isn't our fault. You know, I mean, my biggest beef with the game, as Ryan knows, because I lost my shit about it, was, and I think I still have the tally actually. I made a tally chart of every time I crashed in Cyberpunk, like that my PS5 would stop. It would say an error has occurred, and then it would take me back down to the main screen where you got the tiles and whatnot. In the end, after 2 days of playing, so I didn't count the tally on the first 2 days. I started only doing it because I was shouting about it to Ryan. I had 32 crashes in 2 days, and I wasn't playing at like 8 a.m. till 3 p.m. You know, it was like a solid, like a working day of just, like started playing it at 10ish and kind of finished up around 6, 7, mainly because I got tired of it crashing. So I just played something else 32 times. I spent more time on the main screen. That would be, it first started once every 2 hours. And then it started to do once every hour. And then there was a quest that I told Ryan that I had a crash repeatedly. Boot up, load up the game, loading, crash, loading, crash, loading, crash, and just so on and so forth. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say with this game is it's I don't think I can play it again. Like,
no, I don't.
No,
I think it's tainted. I think, again, the problems that we've got with it aren't fixable. Maybe, I mean, if they spend a year, fully essentially recrafting that whole kind of system, then sure. But I think still the open world will feel pretty empty. I guess maybe if you know what you're getting into and you treat it as more of like a single player, like a story driven game, then sure. But
sure.
So do you reckon when they get it all fixed, do you reckon it'll be a case of just too little too late with this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing to say too little too late, because that implies that I've lost interest because it wasn't ready on time. I would have happily waited another year, 2 years for them to sort this out. And if they turned around, if it went a year from now and they fixed all the problems that I had with it, not the bugs, the crashes, but all the mechanical, like the guts of it, then I would jump back in happily. But those would feel like too massive. If they had 5 years to make this game, well, technically 8 years to make this game, and they didn't sort those out, then what hope have they got to do it in a year after the game's already come out?
Yeah. Like, yeah, it's true. Like, it's going to take a huge amount of time to try and fix the fundamental issues with the game, as Ryan said. Like, you can fix as many bugs and crashes as you want, but there is fundamentally a problem with the game, and that's that it wasn't the game that was sold. It's not the game that was marketed. Right. It wasn't the game that was hyped. And a big thing that I want to stress is that it's not us blaming all of CD Projekt Red.
No.
The developers deserve a hug, the biggest, tightest hug they could possibly have, because they crunched their asses off for probably 4 years, 5 years of the process, getting the crunching even more and more as time went on. And now they've got to sit there knowing that the product that they crunched all these overtime hours for, because the CEO, I think you said it was the CEO, wasn't it, Ryan, who was basically like, no, ship it, need to get it ready.
It came out, that it was the main kind of board of managers rather than kind of any investors or stakeholders, shareholders or anything.
Yeah. And if it, it's not fair on the developers to have spent all this time, crunching all these hours to have a game come out, to then be told, by the way, it's really shit. and it's really buggy and crashy, and everyone on Twitter's going, "Oh, the fucking you call this game development?" And then they've got to come back in after Christmas to fix a game that they've just spent 8 years working on.
Yeah,
that's very optimistic to assume that they're getting Christmas off.
Officially, they've got Christmas off. They say they've got Christmas holiday. I don't know about that. I don't think so. I think there's people probably doing bug testing right now.
I'm sure.
And I think it's appalling. I don't really give a shit about us. And yeah, we're consumers and we've spent the money. But hey, we're returning it. Me and Ryan are getting our copies returned. Ryan's already had his returned, so I can wash my hands of it. But what can't be washed away is the fact that these developers probably turned around and said this game is not ready, and they were told to, shut the fuck up, So that's the appalling thing for me. Is I guess the lesson of this game. I guess the lesson of this game is don't treat your staff like shit, and don't take your employees for a ride.
Because when news was coming out about how hard and how overworked the staff were for the game, when articles were coming out, it was kind of opening up old stories of what the Red Dead 2 staff were going through, like working 100-hour weeks, like all day, all night, every day, to try and get the game finished, and hearing like complaints from like wives and girlfriends, boyfriends, husbands, saying like, I don't see them anymore because they're in the office like for way longer than should be, legal. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it was saying like, but I guess the difference is there, at least when Red Dead 2 came out, and all that arduous hard work was paid off, and so they could finally sit back and go, woof. So I feel kind of extra worse for the poor Cyberpunk team that works tirelessly all this time to have a game come out and it's busted.
I think the worst thing is as well, when you compare it to something like Red Dead 2, is that came out, and one of the best things it did, like people have got problems with it, sure, but it was, very well received. And one of the best things it did is it was so polished. Every single cutscene, every single mission felt really cool, really cinematic, really well polished. And Cyberpunk, even on the main missions, even on the biggest, simplest missions, and anything in between, just feels unfinished because the core game feels unfinished. Whereas Red Dead, polished the main story, polished side stories, and polished the world underneath it. So no matter what you were doing, you always felt like, obviously not defending horrific work hours or anything like that, but at least like you say, it came out and the devs can go, we're done.
Yeah.
Whereas the CD Projekt Red ones go, and then they get
like working overtime to finish building this house, and then you go, we're done. It just crumbles behind you, and you're like,
essentially, yeah. So at least with Red Dead 2, like there was this sense of conclusion, this sense of completion.
Yeah.
So it must be even more kind of mentally and psychologically and emotionally taxing for the poor development team for. Whereas, staff working for Cyberpunk,
because it's not an exciting time for them. Like the devs in Red Dead, when they finish Red Dead 2, they can go off to different jobs. They can start working on new Rockstar projects. They can start moving on to Red Dead Online. They can do whatever the hell they want after that point. With the CDPR guys, like, they can't do that. They're not going to move on to any new title. They're not going to move on to DLC. They're going to have to focus entirely on fixing a broken game. And as
they've already said they had multiplayer planned. I mean, not like immediately, but they were looking at doing like big DLC pack and then multiplayer. And they've already said they're like, do you know what? Scrap off multiplayer for like another year. We've got too many things to fix, and they're sticking with it. In fairness to them, they are gonna do their best to sort it. But I think that's only because they've put so much money into it now. It's the same as like Anthem and stuff like that, where they bombed when they came out, but they've put so much money into them. It makes more sense to try and rescue this game than to just go, well, let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So from what I've been hearing, then that the bugs and the crashes that was just one of the issues with the games. Then with the game.
Yeah, and not even the biggest one, I think, in my opinion.
I mean, overall, it's a problem that won't be fixed.
So do you reckon there is any salvaging this? Because this is just kind of the points that you two are making, but there's going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are probably going to thinking there might be loads of people that are going to try it again when it comes out and it will be fine. But then there's a lot of damage that's been done, and there's going to be a lot of people thinking, you know what, nah, because there'll be something else in a couple of years' time, which everyone's going to sink their teeth into with what's going to come out in the future. So do you reckon like their kind of reputation's kind of been tarnished and damaged a little bit because a game has come out that's been unfinished, not working? Do you reckon they'll be able to reclaim some of this hype that they had in the first place and have it be a success?
Maybe. Only time will tell, Bob. Only time will tell.
Well, I'm glad we got to discuss this and turned over some stones for the game. Good.
Goodbye, boys.
Cheers for that, guys.
Cyberpunk.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Pick it up at the PlayStation Store.